fucking hit record. What the fuck is wrong with me? There we go. Okay. Hello, say Corvus.
Hello.
Hello, and there's Oliver. So, I don't know how to make videos on the iPad. This is how this works? I don't know. But I'm gonna do the book tour video because it's Wednesday, and according to the new planner that I made, it's video day.
Will you zoom in on me?
This is how you zoom in when you don't know how to use video editors or photography. So,
What's the matter?
I spent the last several days doing video or doing library things. So, here is the room. This is the library. And as you can see, it's pretty ridiculous for a personal library. So settle in for a long as shit video. Yeah.
Right?
So it was getting to the point where I found myself like sitting down to read a book and going, man, like all of these books are the same. Oh, wait a second. I've literally just read this exact book before. And I'll go through my notebooks and lo and behold, like there are even notes, which is why I remember stuff. So things were a little out of hand. So it was time to put things into sections and alphabetize and actually like be a person who knew what she has in her collection. And I think I have, like, by default, earned a degree in library science just by putting this thing together. So, and I've certainly hurt my back. So here we go. I'm not going to talk about every title because nobody has time for that. I'm just going to kind of generally overview and highlight some kind of weird stuff that I found. And anyway, Corvus is here, so we'll probably
Cheers.
drink things and say words. So this is the Western Esotericism / ceremonial section. Behold. She's Vanna Whiting there, but the iPad doesn't really zoom the way it... Oh, I can get it to go in.
There you go.
See, nobody knows. So this is the ceremonial section, and it's got, generally speaking, things you would think that it should have. I get my books from all over the place. Most of the time, it's like we'll go to Asheville or we'll go to used bookstores around town. Every now and then, you just stumble on some cache because some closet occultist died, and you end up with like multiple copies of Israel Regardie. That's how that happens. So, anyway, behold this section. So this is where a lot of the grimoires live, the Hermeticism stuff, the Kabbalah stuff. There's a teeny tiny section here for Anton LaVey because I didn't know where the fuck to put this dude. Everything is alphabetized by author. And kind of the fun thing about putting things into an order is trying to decide, like, does this book that Crowley wrote about tarot go in the tarot section or in the Aleister Crowley section? And, you know, like when I, so there's shamanism over here, right? When I'm trying to decide whether a book goes in the shamanism section, do I have my scholar hat on? Do I have my practitioner hat on? Like, is it okay if I think the book is stupid and not real? Like, does it still go in the section? So generally speaking, the rule that I was going by was the book had to self-identify as a thing. So a book that purports to be about shamanism ends up in the shamanism section regardless of what I think about it. That seemed to make the most sense. So, because otherwise you're just sitting there trying to make decisions and you change your mind later and then in 5 years you can't find anything because you've changed your mind. So yes. So there's the LaVey section. I gave Dion Fortune her own section because that seemed like a thing that she deserved. Aleister Crowley gets his own section. This is the Occult Beanie Baby section, i.e. Three Hands Press, Troy, and the Peter Gray Show Scarlet Imprint. Anyway, there those are. Werewolves got their own section because I have a werewolf thing. My friends kindly pointed out to me a couple of years ago. It is right next to the animal slash totemism slash, magical animal whatnot things go here. Right?
Yes.
Then I decided with the witchcraft books, the thing that made the most sense was to divide them into primary sources and secondary sources. So for those of you who aren't familiar with those terms, a primary source would be from the perspective of a practitioner. This is an insider writing a book, particularly a how-to book. A secondary source would be, generally speaking, an outsider writing about the thing. Okay? So a book by Silver Ravenwolf about how to be a witch would be a primary source, and then a book by like Helen Berger or Chaz Clifton about people like Silver Ravenwolf who think that they're witches, that would go in the secondary section. So here, I had fewer secondary sources than I thought I did, and I've divided them in two ways again. I've got kind of like, these are not all academic books, obviously, but a lot of them are. So we've got these, but there's something that happens in occult books that I thought deserved its own genre, and that's the kind of sensationalism section, right? So these are the books that, like, this is like the Time Life coffee table books, the Hans Holzer, like that kind of stuff. Alex Marr. Think about those books that are like, ooh, in America, there's this underbelly of people who think that they're witches. Let's look at them. Look at all these scandalous pictures. So like Colin Wilson lives here. Anyway, this, by the way, this book was one of the very first books I ever had on witches. It was in the box of books abandoned in my aunt's attic after my grandfather died. And it's got those wonderful pictures of like topless Janet Farrar getting her thame and like all those beautiful priestess pictures that I was totally enraptured by as a child and subsequently a teenager, and that's how I knew I had to be a Gardnerian, was because of Time Life coffee table books, etc. I made a section for biographies and autobiographies because there ended up being a whole lot of those, right? And trying to decide if the Robert Cochrane letters would be better off in primary sources or in biographies and autobiographies, and I went with biographies and autobiographies because of Michael Howard's commentaries. Yes, so there's that. Philip Heselton lives over here, etc., etc. That's the shelf. Over here, primary sources begin here, and they're just alphabetized. And I decided not to draw any lines in terms of types of witchcraft or types of paganism. So like there's some like Hellenic Reconstructionist stuff in here, and there's lots of like devotional polytheism in here, and that kind of stuff. It was too crazy making to try and separate that out without making lots of really arbitrary calls about who belongs to what tradition, when honestly that's none of my fucking business. Here, I decided to go ahead and give Sabbats a section, just because those are the kind of books that I find myself pulling out a lot of the time, just because I'm too lazy to write something, or I just need like some kind of inspiration for something, or I want to like be really excited about the old Campanelli covers, something like that. Periodicals. So this is every issue of New Witch and Witches and Pagans magazine that's ever been printed, along with Peter Paddon's Hidden Path stuff, or Crooked Path, excuse me. The Hidden Path is a different periodical, la la la. His Crooked Path journals, and then like Devon Hunter's Modern Witch is over here when they had print copies of that, plus some of the stuff that people print themselves. So like I've got like kind of a zine that a local group put out. I've got stuff that Foxfire has done, like anything that's kind of that kind of more disposable style of printing, I guess is the way I think about it. So like there's some old Pangaias over here and that kind of stuff. Not a ton of periodicals, but there they are. I gave the witch trials and historical witchcraft its own section, because there was enough of that to justify there. So like Salem is over here, and all of the horrible things that happened in Europe are over here, and there's a little bit about witchcraft in Mexico and these are more scholarly books. Like, overwhelmingly, these are scholarly books, with some notable exceptions. So like Isabeau Gowdy lives over here. Lots of Montague Summers, that kind of stuff. I gave goddess spirituality and like feminist paganism its own section, just because those things have always struck me as being very different than like what's going on over here. And there was enough of it, I felt, to justify that section. So like there's Mary Daly and there's Starhawk, and Z Budapest is over here, etc. The annuals section. I don't have a ton of this kind of stuff, just because, I don't know, I stopped caring at some point. But like there's a Witch's Almanac from almost every year I've been practicing. I'm missing a few. The Pomegranate is over here. I read the Pomegranate digitally now, so I don't have a lot of the printouts. For those of you who don't know, Pomegranate is the Journal of Pagan Studies, put out on Equinox, and it's one of those things that's usually like too expensive to own, but being in kind of a pagan studies circle, you run into it. It's important. A handful of Llewellyn annuals. I like the Witch's Companion every now and then, and I often scoop them up after, like, a couple years after the fact when they're super cheap and people can't give them away. And there's always good articles from, like, contemporary writers. I gave the Teen Witch materials its own section just because it fills my heart with glee. And there's both primary and secondary sources mixed in here. So, like, I've got, like, Helen Berger had a book, a scholarly book on witchcraft amongst teenagers, so that's over here. Peg Alloway is over here. But then all of the stuff, like this amazing book by Fiona Horn about how to be a witch as a teenage girl, right? Which was just like amazing. She's got a whole section about like magical teen girl orgasms, which made me feel really weird, like the first time I read it. Well, you know, la la la. The Teen Witch Kit is here because who wouldn't want that in their personal library. Spellbound, which was in print for a hot second and has a delightful quiz in it about what kind of witch are you, and like my like 17-year-old self was like couldn't circle enough bubbles to be like, you're obviously like the hard-ass traditionalist, like why are you even reading this book? That wasn't actually an answer, but it should have been, because even before I was a seeker, I was already, you know, a ridiculous Gardnerian on the inside. So and then here's just like the rest of the collection, alphabetized by last name, of course. So like yeah, the psychic, how to be psychic, like those kinds of books are mixed in here. I just didn't want to draw lines about those sorts of things. I don't know. Do you guys want to like more self-printed kind of stuff? I'm really intrigued by people who operate courses, particularly like print courses about like how to be a witch. Those old correspondence things that you used to see, particularly in the 90s and early 2000s, those are really great. If they come with audio, which thank God this one did, like even better. Some BJ Conway, all the Vivian Crowley, 3 billion copies of Scott Cunningham. With the original covers, because those are the best. The new covers, once like Robin Wood wasn't illustrating things anymore, I was just done. I was not interested. 6 billion copies of A Witch's Bible. I didn't know I had 5 copies. I found out. You'll notice that I have multiple copies of several titles. That happens for a couple of reasons. Sometimes it's because they're different editions, right? So like there are multiple copies of Meaning of Witchcraft and Witchcraft Today. Because if I find an interesting copy, particularly just randomly at a used bookstore, I will snap it up. Some of it is just like for the sake of being a weirdo. So like I have multiple covers of Teen Witch, just because I like them and it's like nostalgic and makes me happy. Raven Grimasi. Sometimes I just forget that I own books. Or I find a really cheap copy of a book that's usually expensive. So like the first time I bought A Witch's Bible, it was like $25, $30. It was one of those more expensive paperbacks, and I bought it when I was a teenager. So like that was a lot of money. And then later on you'd find one for like $3 at a used bookstore, and it would feel like too good of a deal. Well, 20 years later, like that's what happens. So, oh look, this is the Magical Child edition. Of course I need this edition, blah, blah, blah. More books. This is where Aidan Kelly lives. Lots of Raven Caldera. Deborah Lipp lives down here. Catherine McMorgan. Yeah, I ended up with 2 copies of Witta, an Irish pagan tradition by Aidan McCoy, because that book just cracks me up. And it's out of print, or at least I think it's out of print. But that's the joke about the ancient Irish potato gods. That's where that joke comes from, so I love that book. I read Anthony Page's Rocking the Goddess in college, and I loved the shit out of this book. It wasn't in print for very long, and it's basically teen witch if it was written by somebody in their mid-20s for people in like their early 20s. So it's a little bit more mature than like a Silver Ravenwolf book, but this was like right up my alley when I was an alienated freshman at my shitty tiny college. And he wrote a second one, which was basically the same book that I loved almost as much, American Witch. And I don't know what happened to Anthony Page. I wish he was still around. Maybe I should Google him and find out. Let's see. It's my Cable Blocking the Witch School book. Okay. Lady Passion, the Goodly Spell book. She's local, relatively local. Let's see. And then then I thought it froze, but it didn't. It's like I'm not shooting this again. The P section is basically Christopher Penczak, because he just writes a whole lot and shows off to the rest of us who do not. So, here we go. Silver Ravenwolf. Because everybody needs 3 billion copies of To Ride a Silver Broomstick. I had the exact right amount of book space to end at Zimmerman. So that to me was a sign that I do not, in fact, own too many books. I own the perfect number of books. So these are the witch books. And then we're going to go over here. Here, this case right here, this is tarot. So these are all of my tarot books. Oh no! Your life is so hard. Yeah. There we go. See, I decided to put Crowley in the tarot section. The Lenormand stuff is over here too. I have multiple copies of the medicine cards because people keep giving them to me. Like, at least twice I've had somebody go, I found these when I was cleaning my bookcase and I thought of you, and then I end up with another copy of medicine cards. But I remember reading that how-to book as like a freshman in high school, and it tells you very explicitly that you're supposed to do your reading and get your 9 totem animals. That thing about having 9 totem animals, near as I can tell, comes from medicine cards. So when people talk about having 9 spirit guides or 9 totem animals, you can bet your butt that they own the medicine cards. Anyway, it tells you, like, you're supposed to draw your 9 cards, and then you're never supposed to do this reading again. So I did that, and I think I could probably still name most of them. But I remember heron and hummingbird and lots of birds. I don't think that thing was legit, but whatever. There are my binders for tarot school notes and like my own tarot readings and reading notes. I take notes when I read, so I've got a ton of binders around the house that are just full of my own thoughts and annotations on whatever, and quotes that I think are important, stuff that I think I'll want to write about later, that kind of junk. There's tarot. Astrology has a teeny tiny section because, honestly, astrology was one of those things that I felt like I needed to know about because that's, like, this is one of the pillars of, like, the Western magical tradition, so there you have it, but it's not something that I've actually ever been interested in, so this is as far as I ever got. So tried that. Everybody started here, right? The only astrology book you'll ever need.
God,
Which
I remember buying that as an undergrad. I loved that book.
wasn't it mostly about celebrities?
Yes. But it also came with a CD-ROM.
Shit.
Do you remember CD-ROMs? Did they
I
make
do
those
remember
anymore?
They don't do those anymore, but I actually have
Um,
several books here with CD-ROMs.
Yeah, and you could like do your own chart or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there is the the African diaspora / hoodoo / white people who think that they're black section. Well, let's be real. Like, there's a lot of that going around these days. So this was getting its own section. I did a lot with West African traditions as an undergrad in college. Like, I took several classes in African history, and because I was doing religious studies, like, that's why this section looks the way it does, is because there was a period where that was something that I was actually studying, like as a scholar, not as a would-be practitioner. The Hyatt books, the 2 Harry Hyatt books, they're a couple of the gems in my collection. I lucked out on those and found them on Etsy, which is fucking crazy. I don't know, somebody had a whole bunch of them like in some basement boxes and put them all on Etsy for dirt cheap, and now you can't find them anywhere. So there are 5 books in that series, books 1 through 3. You can still find 3 if you want to pay like $400 or $500 for it. Books 1 and 2, I've never seen anywhere except in academic libraries. So like University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has a set that I've seen. But you just, like, you're not going to find those on eBay. But having 4 and 5 is pretty special. I'm pretty pumped about that. Again, a lot of these books have been gifted to me, too. A couple of them I'm fairly certain I accidentally stole from a coven sibling. So, if you're watching this, like, sorry. Oh, and we're back in astrology. So, like, these 6 shelves. I bought the Cat Ironwood books actually at her store in the San Francisco area, and that was really cool getting to go, because some of that stuff is nuts. Cat Ironwood is a strange lady, but it was cool getting like my book signed, and there were definitely books that she refused to sell me because you have to be in her correspondence course. So, alas, I tried. But, yeah. So there are these guys. Again, I'm not making any kind of distinction in terms of, like, authenticity or whatever. If something self-identifies as being part of these traditions, it goes in the section so that it can be found later. And then a couple more. I have a teeny tiny Druidry section. There's a little bit of Celtic Recon stuff in here, too. And basically anything that ADF publishes goes over here too. So like there's my Ian Corrigan. There's my Oliver. He's in the way. You should move your butt. You should. The Mabinogion is over here like 4 times. Oh, there goes your Auntie Corvus. So there are those. And then I've got a teeny tiny shelf of dream and astral projection stuff. Again, not something that was ever really a central interest, but something that just, like, required kind of a cursory examination. So there's that. And then I have I wasn't really sure if this should even go, like, in this room, but I have a section of, like, ghost stories and paranormal stuff, because, like, everybody went through that phase, right?
Oh God, yes.
Hell yeah! Are you kidding? I've got, like, 3 different kinds of EMF readers upstairs. You know, just normal stuff. For science, yes. For when we're doing science with our witchcraft. Everybody needs EMF readers for that. So, like, my favorite childhood spooky story collections are over here, along with, like, the more serious, like, ghost hunting stuff, and, like, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, right? Like, everything that's in any way associated with ghosts or hauntings, etc., is over here. And then finally, there is the Northern Traditions stuff. So all the Viking stuff is here. The Asatru stuff is over here. It's kind of a mixed up jumble of whatever. The rune stuff is over here. So, yeah. Binders. There are, like, there's the Harry Hyatt stuff that I couldn't get a hard copy of, so I have a PDF that I printed off. And then my own notes. This pile of binders up here is actually the stuff that went into me writing my own book, so that's like my manuscript and all that stuff. Oh, I lied. There's another section. The herb books are up here. So there are those. Not a big herb person. I do like plants, but most of my interest has to do with like how to not kill these things that I have instead of like doing magic with them necessarily. But this is where those books live. So that is the book collection. Here's Corvus again. One of this library's only patrons. Because I don't like it when other people touch the books. Because I'm a jerk.
Because you yell at people for not supporting the spine and for pinching the pages.
Well, shit. Some of these books are expensive. Like, it kills me. One of the things, like one of the most painful traveling experiences that I have every year is going to Pantheacon, where I mostly live standing next to David at Fields Books, so I can just like hand him money as he pulls books out over the course of the week. And then watching like people who've had too much to drink stumble through the merchant section and manhandle like the Three Hands Press books, which just like fucking kills me. And it's a good thing that I don't work at bookshops because I would just lose my shit at people. But David is just like, oh yeah, we've got book number 3 in that set in the back. Do you want to see it? And then like, I don't know how he does it because I'd be murdering some bitches. So yeah, I don't like it when people pinch the pages or break spines, or it kills me. Or when they lick their fingers before they turn a page. Ugh!
Oh, I do that all the time.
Ugh! No! I mean, if it's your 5th copy of a witch's Bible, then whatever. But like, if it's Harry Hyatt or like, I don't fucking know. But no! Like, get a bookmark and a notebook, people. Like, come on.
Oh yeah, I bet in the corners to keep my place too.
No, they give you bookmarks when you buy books. Why would you do that? What kind of monster does that?
Me.
No.
Corvus.
All right, so this is the longest fucking video ever. Bye, guys.